Hello and welcome to this quick guide on UI widgets in Crayta. A UI widget is essentially any of these text-based things which appear to the user. They could be in the game world or they could be on the user template if you wanted to give them some kind of heads-up display or communicate stuff to them, like instructions and things like that. Let's take a look at this example here, which is the leaderboard. So in my game, the leaderboard is within the game world itself, although it could be attached to the user template if I wanted it to be. And the best way to do that, to put a UI widget in the game world, is to create some kind of locator and then add the widget to the locator so that you can really easily move it around and rotate it and all of the rest of that sort of stuff. I've also attached a leaderboard script, which is a Lua script, which will manage the flow of data to the widget itself. Let's take a look at the widget code. So a widget, a UI widget in Crayta, is written in HTML code. Each widget is essentially like its own self-contained HTML document. At the start of the document, you'll find code representing how it is styled and the appearance of it. In the next section, you'll see the content of the actual UI widget itself. And in the final section, you'll see that there's some JavaScript, and the JavaScript is really to do with maintaining and updating that data model. A data model, in this situation, you create the JS model here, and you can see that that's creating a data model. And a data model is essentially a place to store information that's coming in from the Lua script and that will then feed into the HTML up here. The HTML part of this widget reacts to that data model. So every time that data model is updated, it's pushed to this HTML, which then updates the content itself on here, whatever the content that might be. It might be rows of high scores, it might be a title, it might be the currency and the amount of money you currently have. Who knows? It's whatever kind of content or whatever information you need to display to the user in the widget. Here you can see I've created this JS model here and I've given it some kind of schema. So I've given it essentially the data model will need some kind of format for its data. So we've got the open parentheses and close parentheses, which show that it's some kind of it's a JavaScript object. And within that object, we have the property SomeWords, which has a string hello worlds. And we've got a property scores, which has in it an array, or in Lua, this is called a table. So this is an array of objects. Each one of those has got a name and a score. And this is really similar to what you'll get through when you're using the leaderboard API in Crayta. So how does this JS model update in this HTML? Well, we can see down here, there's this example coherent function, and this is a function that's being called from Lua. So if I go to my Lua script that is sitting on the same entity, you can see this line here says self get entity leaderboard.js. So communicate with the leaderboard widgets.js and call the function example coherent function. This is the same function name as this, so this function will be called. It also passes in this fake results object. So using the comma separated thing there, it essentially passes that property in there. And that gets put into this argument input, and then input goes into the scores and it updates this model. Once it's done that, I need to run engine.update whole model and engine.synchronize models in order for that to propagate up to the HTML. At the moment, I've removed any of the reactive parts of the HTML to show you how to implement those. So let's have a look at this. I want to implement this SomeWords part of my JS model. I want to replace whatever is in the h1 tag, so at the moment it's leaderboard, with whatever is in the SomeWords data. So the way I would do that is essentially delete what data is in the h1 tag at the moment, go within the opening h1 tag here and type data -bind -value equals quote marks, double parentheses open, and then I need the name of my model, which is example model, dot, and then the name of the data within that, which is SomeWords. If I then do double close parentheses, end quotation marks, and save it, and go back to my game, I can see that that has updated even in the editor. If I want to do something a little bit more complex, like update an array like this, we can do that in a really similar way. So at the moment, I have hard coded in how many rows there are within my leaderboard. Let's delete 2 of the 3 rows, leaving us just 1 row. What I would do here is essentially add data-bind-for to run a for loop for each piece of data within my scores data. Data-bind-for equals, and then I use the name of a variable to capture each row or each item within that array. So for me, I'm going to use the term record, colon, double parentheses open, and then the name of the data point within my JS model. So my JS model is example model, and the name of the data point is scores.scores. Double parentheses closed and quotation marks. Now that I've done that, this row, or everything between this div and this div, will be duplicated for each one of these scores. And we can see that in action already, because you can see there's 3 scores, even though I've only got 1 row. So that's already working. Now, if I want this data, at the moment, the data is all the same for all 3. If I want this data to be reactive to that, all I need to do is use the same sort of thing we did up here with the h1 tag and do data-bind-value equals quote marks, open double parentheses, record dot, and the first thing is the name, double parentheses closed, end quotation marks, and the same again in this p tag here, data-bind-value equals quote marks, double parentheses, record.score, double parentheses, end quotation marks, save. If I return back to the game, you can see that now this data is different for each of the rows. Something to note is that UI widgets only update on the client, they don't update on the server. So make sure that you're running any kind of update code on the client. This is because the server isn't displaying data or isn't displaying UI widgets to anyone, because the server is only concerned with the core game model. The UI widgets are only updated on the client or locally. So just bear that in mind. Now, when I run this game, this client init will run, and then we will see the leaderboard go and get the results, come back, and then generate some fake results, because there won't be any results whilst I'm testing the game. Generate some fake results and then send those to my leaderboard. So if I press F5, we can see that it's sent Super Goose 1, Super Goose 2, and Super Goose 3, and some new scores into my leaderboard. And that's essentially the crux of the UI widgets and how the HTML code works with the JavaScript code at the bottom, and how the model ties in to the reactive contents of the HTML. This can be a little bit tricky, so if you get stuck with this, there's a channel on the Discord specifically devoted to UI help, so go and check that out and ask any questions in there. You feel free to @me if it's to do with this tutorial, and I really look forward to seeing your UI widgets in Crayta.